Ba-dum-bum, we're live. FU Ceara. Happy FU Friday. What is
FU JD and FU St. Patrick's Day.
Oh yeah. St. Patrick's Day. Isn't it like Green Beer Day? Is that why the FU at the bottom is green today?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Oh my God. All right. What are we
You're
talking
not wearing
about?
any green. I thought you were going to change your headphones to green.
I don't have green. I've got blue, black, red, or pink, or whatever this is, and white. That's it. They're like $80. It's kind of a waste.
Well,
to
get
get
green, my friend.
Yeah, they do have green ones. I could have done green. Maybe I should.
Hey, it is FU Friday, JD. It is FU Friday, and we did some pre-tweets last night to see what people wanted to hear about. And you know what? Everyone wants to say FU to Gensler. You want to say FU to Gensler. I want to say FU to Gensler. All the stuff I put out, people were like, yep, FU Gensler. That is the fact. That is what's going on. We can't talk about Gensler and only Gensler the whole time. I guess we can. We're also going to talk about Europium and the FUD around that. And then we're going to talk about everyone pivoting to AI and the FUD around that and how it's going to kill crypto. Crypto's going to die because of AI. Are you ready?
I'm ready. All right, welcome back. Funny about the Stinger video. You know when you have you ever heard of those like pump up songs that people get, or you watch like Tony Robbins before he goes on stage, and he like and then spins around and does all this shit to get himself all fired up. I'm pretty sure I feel like Tony Robbins when that song comes on. I'm like, let's go.
Anyways, is that why wearing a compression sock on your arm in the video?
Is that what that is?
No, it's supposed to be like a punk thing, you know, when you like
a punk sleeve. Oh, yeah. I thought maybe I just in the video I had like diabetes or something, but people with diabetes have to wear that shit, right? I don't know. Anyways, quick before we get into it, shout out to Spectral for the merch. This is like such a soft, beautiful shirt. It's got a really cool back, but you guys can't really. You guys can't
come on, show us.
Well, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Definitely a fan of the Spectral merch. If you don't know who they are or what they do, check them out. They're doing some really neat stuff with
a lot of merch and imagery right now is in space. Have we selected which crypto is going to be used on Mars?
Doge for sure. Elon is definitely going to use only Doge. That's going to be the national currency of Mars. Would it be national?
National? Planetary currency.
Planetary currency?
Interplanetary, because it would be here and there. So then maybe you'll have something new for Mars.
That's true. And I bet you could real time transact between here and Mars. You just have a bridge. That'd be like a token bridge between Mars and Earth. Yeah, it'd be awesome. Mars bars.
Mars bridge, obviously. You know who else is making incredible, great new national ideas in blockchain is Europe. I know Europe's not a nation, but just like neither is Mars a nation. Americans are hard. We're not great with our geography vocabulary, apparently.
You moved on from the Mars thing. I had a really good idea. Emissions for the bridge, for people that are using the bridge, emissions would be Mars bars. But come on, that was fucking good. That was good. That was a good joke. What are you talking about? Why aren't you laughing? Okay, fuck it. Let's move on. Europium.
Europium. So there were a lot of headlines this week that were about European Parliament mucking up smart contracts. We talked about that yesterday. But then there also were several headlines about their digital wallets and how this was going to hurt crypto. And I'm here to dispel that FUD because their digital wallets have absolutely nothing to do with crypto. So the EU is looking at actually having their own blockchain. Tongue-in-cheek, it could be called Europium. This was an offhand comment from one person.
It's picked up steam, though, because Europium's been quoted and syndicated tons of times now.
But this was essentially at the same time as they negotiated about the smart contract deal. Some of the comments that came out during journalism afterwards were, and then we're going to have Europium, which is our own proprietary blockchain. Our free movement. Okay. So what this actually is the idea that those in the EU already have freedom to move around the EU, right? So around the Schengen states and Switzerland and so on and so forth. And they're having troubles because sometimes that isn't recorded. Sometimes education isn't recorded and it can be difficult to prove your credentials. Sometimes your driver's license is in Polish. Have you ever heard this gig? This joke?
Yeah.
Sometimes your driver's license is in Polish, and when you get pulled over in the UK, they don't read Polish, and so for a long time, the joke is that Polish people were telling them that the word driver's license was their name, and then London police would write a ticket to driver's license, and
I
then
haven't
they
heard that.
tried to
I haven't heard that. That's hilarious.
so the thing is that this did actually happen, but it was only like a few people, and then of course the trope is that it was hundreds of people. But apparently they kept pulling the same people over, and so there were like almost 100 tickets, speeding tickets and evasion of police tickets for this driver's license. But they just, they didn't Google
what it meant in Polish. That's freaking hilarious.
And so it was a few different people, and they put out this warrant for driver's license, and then someone Polish on the police team had to come forward and be like, "You've been duped." So to avoid that sort of thing, looking at releasing the European Digital Identity Framework.
Yeah.
And that would be more, they would like it to live on the blockchain. Maybe they'll call it something like Europium, who knows? But the intention is for, from what I understand, zero proof knowledge for identity, and for ease of access for credentials, for movement, for IDs, for all that kind of thing. And actually, what I used to work on in blockchain was digital credentialing for post-secondary institutions. So there's a lot of use case scenarios for how this works already.
Mm-hmm.
They're not making their own cryptocurrency that they're going to use instead of the euro, at least not yet. And it also is not specifically called Europium. But the intention is that they would like to have a blockchain that is their own proprietary blockchain, so that they are owning all of that data, so that when they have all of the digital information, they can rely on Vitalik or Avalanche as a subnet to host it, right? That would probably talk about security.
Yeah. So this is kind of an interesting one. I think one of the obvious, at least to me, use cases of blockchain technology is like supply chain and identity management, and the immutability of some of these personal records, eventually medical records and many other things. It will be a much, much, much more efficient structure than anything we currently have. And if it's done correctly, you as the individual end up actually owning more of your data. And so in Canada, as an example, where I used to live and where you live, it's actually incredibly difficult to get access to your own medical records. There is a way to get access to them, but it's not like you just have that stuff and you can simply get it and it makes sense to you. Generally, you have to go to all your different doctors, and they don't put all the charts on the systems and all this other nonsense. So, I mean, obviously there's a lot of, in my opinion, there's a lot of applications for this. In 2016, 17, we worked with a company and helped accelerate fintech and blockchain tech into the US government. And I tell this story, I don't think I've told it on this podcast, but I tell this story that's actually when I realized, holy crap, like, although this is all being done on a private, separate network basis at that time, the applications were way more advanced than I expected to see at that point in time. I mean, Ethereum had just come out in 2015, and smart contracts were just kind of a new thing that people were trying to wrap their head around. But all of a sudden, there was all these private entities that were building, commercial grade or enterprise grade that closed blockchain networks. Anyways, so to sum up, I think definitely we're going to see a hell of a lot more of that. I don't think it's like as exciting. Like if the UK government came out and said, "Hey, we're going to use a new database provider that has like super high security or some nonsense," we'd all be like, "Cool, like wake us up when it happens, and then we'll see if it's okay." For some reason, everybody like jumps to some conclusion that, oh shit, they're doing this thing, which means that they hate crypto as it is, and they're only going to allow that wallet to be used for your digital assets. I doubt it. That's pretty unlikely, even in the UK and the rest of Europe, which is generally a little bit more big government focused. Not all of them, but generally. Anyways,
it would be so much to police.
Oh, could you imagine how much they?
No one would do that.
Could you imagine how much they'd love to police that? But so here's kind of the counter argument, right? To try to steelman the other point, which is where some of this FUD is coming from. Although most of it is generally baseless, and generally people just taking the bait from the headlines and then using hyperbole to make it sound a lot worse than it is and whatever. But there is, in fact, potentially a slippery slope argument. And I use that phrase all the time. And the only reason I use that is because I hear it on the All In podcast all the time. So shout out to them. Maybe someday they'll have me on their pod. That'd be fun. But anyways, the slippery slope argument here is that, once they get everybody comfortable with something like this, then the steps to a CBDC, pretty simple. The steps to maybe some prohibitive regulation are pretty simple. Like the biggest step is the first step. And once they've taken the first step and all the debate has happened and everybody calmed down and realized that it's probably not going to be the end of the world, then under the cover of darkness, on the weekends and the evenings, they're going to make these little announcements, and slowly but surely we're going to wake up one day and be like, oh crap, we ended up with a European CBDC, one wallet that's allowed, and that's the European wallet, and now they're not allowing you to transact on any other networks or some nonsense. Like, is that the likely end of this? I don't think so, but we do have to pay attention. I think we're going to see a lot more international jurisdictions adopting blockchain technology for a lot of these other use cases, other than finance and NFTs and gaming. There's a lot of really impactful for global society applications that are being built. And so it'll be interesting to see how the governments participate. It would be crazy to think they won't. The fact that the governments are participating is like saying, well, the internet came out, but the government can't use it because they're going to try to shut it down. Well, no. If the internet was going to stay around for the future, obviously governments have to adopt it. I see this as a positive. Governments trying to adopt blockchain technology validates that there are many great use cases for the technology. We just have to figure out how to thread the needle through the regulatory gauntlet. All right.
You led us directly into the other funny thing that's coming out, which is the EU overtaking as the world crypto leader? Are they? Is that what's happening? Has America been the world crypto leader? Who's actually leading in crypto? There's now this question of almost like a blockchain arms race.
Yeah, America is losing that arms race by a significant margin, and I think we're gonna point to why we think that is in a few minutes. But America's absolutely losing the arms race. America is probably one of the most unfavorable places for crypto right now, because there is so much opacity, so much uncertainty, yet such a concentration of capital in America. So as an application, it's very difficult because you want to have access to American users, because in many cases there's a lot more institutional adoption from America, although not that there isn't elsewhere, but there's a lot in America relative to everybody else. And for some reason, they've just made it incredibly difficult to navigate and actually quite uncertain. And that is a huge, huge, huge disadvantage, which is a big piece of why we're constantly lobbying, and we're part of the associations, and we're working towards trying to develop, trying to have a seat at the table in these regulatory frameworks, because without them, we will lose. America will lose. And by extension, North America and the Western world generally will lose. We're seeing a lot of jurisdictions. We talked about Dubai, we talked about Singapore on previous episodes, even China. China's been kind of flip-floppy back and forth. But the UK in particular and the rest of Europe has been more forward in terms of at least trying to establish some guidelines and frameworks and so on. Are they going to win the arms race? I don't know. There's a lot of amazing talent in Europe. Like a lot of really, really incredible products are coming out of Europe. From a political perspective, if I was Europe, I would say, holy crap, this is potentially an inflection point in global finance and global tech, really. Notwithstanding the AI revolution, which sounds like we're going to talk about today too. But I think, if they were to say, hey, what's one thing that we could actually focus on that might set us apart and give us some sort of competitive advantage? This is a pretty good example of that. The next best place, I guess, to most people in terms of like institutional adoption and capital and user asset value and so on would be Europe. That's the next probably greatest environment next to America. Although there's a lot of great nations that are big into crypto, but I think that Europe is a great place for developers and builders to go. There's a lot of predictable laws and so on and so forth.
There's a lot of cool dexes coming out of Berlin specifically.
Yeah, Berlin's like definitely a big hub. Even Ethereum.
There's a lot of people in Turkey who are so bullish on crypto still, right? Like the EU is such a broad peoples that of course there's going to be lots of talent there, and there's going to be a different type of push, and they're all able to put pressure on the EU as opposed to their individual countries. So the resource pool is just so much larger. But I do need to talk about the slippery slope fallacy, and we also need to talk about the recency bias. So we are seeing these things come out of the EU this week, and a couple of weeks ago we saw similar types of conversations coming out about Hong Kong. Yeah. And a couple of weeks before that, we saw some interesting conversations that are similar come out of Brazil. And so when we think about the blockchain arms race, we're like, oh, is EU leading? It's like, well, actually, we've already had this news from a few different other places. So leading, not leading, who goes faster, who doesn't go faster. What would be great to see is how they might collaborate. But just because you read it today doesn't make it more real or more true than something that you read 3 weeks
last week. Yeah. I mean, in an environment where journalism was held to a different standard than it seems to be right now, recency bias makes a lot more sense. Like back in the day where journalists were completely unbiased and it was all about reporting facts, adding facts in addition to previous stories, correcting the record if they made mistakes. That shit never happens now. So, but that's why there's a tendency, I think, for us to want to believe something we've heard more recently. So like, if you see a headline from a big publication that says Europa or Europium or whatever the fuck, and they're winning the arms race, your natural tendency, if you've been around for more than 10 or 15 years, is to automatically assume that must be the most current information, because that used to be how journalism worked. But apparently not today. Anyways, apologies for the noise in the background. We've got our cleaners here doing some cleaning, so nothing I can do about it. Anyways, yeah. So
this next story for me, which is about the Euler hacker.
Yeah, Euler.
Oh, sorry, my bad. I'm saying it wrong.
I'm not really sure, actually, 100% sure how to pronounce it. A lot of people call it Euler. I've heard it called Euler.
It was like Bueller, like no one's in the classroom.
Yeah, well, if you're a hockey fan, the reason I call it Euler is because I'm an Edmonton Oilers fan. And I have been since I was a toddler. And so any opportunity to have an affinity towards something called Oilers. Yeah.
Surprised you don't have it tattooed on your knuckles.
I don't. I do know surprisingly a lot of people that have Oilers logo tattoos. And the logo is like, it's not really my favorite logo. It's just like an oil drop in a circle.
One of the Oilers super fans got on Family Feud and like wore his Oilers stuff. Really? Anyway, this is obviously Canadian news because we don't know.
I'm sure people are tuning in to hear about my favorite sports team.
But the hacker. This is interesting. Yeah. Tornado Cash, so that's kind of risky. And then there's also some reports of returning assets to some individuals.
Yeah, no. It's my understanding that that's not going to happen. Again, there's a lot of fuzziness around this one. So it was a very, very big hack, 197 million plus or minus. The number changes slightly, and it was a relatively sophisticated exploit. It was a manipulation of the code as the code was deployed. So it wasn't as much an attack as a hack as it was just an economic manipulation, which. Again, I don't want to discount that that's highly illegal. They stole people's money. They're calling it flash loan attack, right? It was a flash loan attack, yeah. They got flash loans for multiple billions of dollars. I'm not going to go through the technical aspects of it. There's some really, really good reports on how it all played out and what happened and so on. You can search on Twitter or whatever, and you can find it because we could spend about an hour talking about it. But a couple things to note. So it's been traced that this hacker has done other hacks or other exploits in the past, and that person has, in fact, not returned the money to the protocols in the past. I don't believe they use Tornado because I'm pretty sure Tornado's at least the front end is gone, unless
Just
they
this
use.
morning, there were news reports about using Tornado.
Maybe they use the smart contracts without the front end, which wouldn't surprise me. Definitely also something that can happen. So Euler, so this is what's really devastating about this situation, in my opinion, is that the vulnerability, so to speak, existed for quite some time, apparently, before someone found a way to manipulate it, which goes to show that there are people meaningfully looking at all of these protocols with a decent TVL, trying to find ways, trying to find backdoors that are very, very difficult to expect in advance, which is why obviously the focus and Euler was a very strong team, PhDs, people that have been building financial products for a long, long time. Very smart, very community oriented, great team, and great technology. Like Euler, again, we don't need to go deep into this, but Euler really is a novel platform doing things from a borrow-lend perspective in just a much different way than borrow-lend has been established elsewhere. And so it's really unfortunate to see this happen. Now, they came out with a bounty saying that they'll give $1 million if they get the money back. I mean, that's 0.5%.
Well, so this is my big FUD thing. So first of all, before we move on from the technical component, if you are interested in the technical component, our friends over at CertIC, so on CertIC Alert at Twitter, they have a really good live thread of all the stuff that's been going on. And if you are interested in security, I'd really suggest going and taking a look at it. It's very thorough. I'll link it in the Twitter chat later. But they told the hacker, they publicly said that if they returned 90% of the funds, they could keep 20 million for themselves. Otherwise, they would face legal action. So they've offered the potential flash loan attack person $20 million, and then the bounty is $1 million.
So this is an interesting one, to be honest, because there's a whole lot of there's a lot of people that have looked into this in the past, and I haven't personally. But so the general consensus is that if you are going to facilitate an exploit like this, the biggest challenge that you're going to have in avoiding detection authorities and your accounts being frozen is, well, you have to tumble it or put it through a mixer like Tornado or something, which aren't perfect, by the way. But if you're sophisticated enough, you can understand how to put them in there so that they're hard to track on the way out. Not so hard when there's very little transactions going through, but still something that can be done. But is getting it to fiat. The biggest challenge is getting it to fiat. Like, how do you get the crypto to something that you can actually use? Because otherwise you just have crypto that sits there that proves that you hacked something, but is it worth it? Like, I don't think it's ever worth it because for the rest of your life, effectively, you're looking over your shoulder, or should be, because there's a lot of people that lose a lot of money here that, may take it into their own hands. I don't know. But the interesting thing is that there's suggestions that you can get about 15%. By the time that you fence the money all the way through and go through all the laundering processes and pay everybody and do things in cash and all this other crap, you have to sell everything at a super discount. Anyways, you end up with about 15%. So on average, when you have bug bounties, like, we use for some of our platforms, Immunify, great platform, by the way, great team, amazing concept. And we get a lot of white hat attempts. And so generally the rule of thumb is you need to make the bounty big enough so that even if they exploited the platform, they're going to get about the same amount of money if they just did the white hat approach. It sucks. It could almost bankrupt a protocol, but it won't kill it. Whereas a hack, in this particular case, if they don't get the money back, it's going to be really difficult. And it's really unfortunate because it's an amazing team that raised a good amount of money from amazing investors. And they have a really unique product that's really actually quite amazing. And so it's really unfortunate to see this happen to good people. But if you were a hacker and you could take 15% and not get in shit and not look over your shoulder forever, I think that might be a more attractive way. But offering $1 million on a $200 million exploit,
it also feels like baiting to say, okay, return everything but $20 million and we won't press charges.
Yeah, that's happened.
I know, but it feels like baiting,
Yeah. I mean, 20 million is a lot of money.
All right, we only have a few minutes left, and you need to say a big FU to Gensler. So, are you ready? Are you going to tell us all about this?
Yeah. So this guy is. I have a love-hate relationship with Gensler because I think as a space, we have to find a way to not be as confrontational as we want to be. Naturally, I want to say FU Gensler, FU regulators, like this is crazy, FU policy. But if we want progress on the regulatory front, there's only a couple paths to get it. In the short term, CFTC and SEC are fighting over jurisdiction, and both of them have claims in their mind why they think crypto should be regulated by the commodities regulators or by the securities regulators. But all that they can really do is enforce current laws. That's generally the power that they have. So try to say, okay, well, this thing should fit under these current laws, and we're making that assumption unless there's some sort of legislation otherwise. Now, agree or disagree with what they're doing. I think we have to give them a little bit of the benefit of the doubt because they're under immense pressure right now. And we can suggest that that pressure was self-inflicted by doing nothing for so long. And the inevitable result of doing nothing for so long was that you were going to get FTXs and Three Arrows and Terra Luna type situations that have fairly substantial impacts to the American public and to others. And now they're getting some backlash for that. And so they're going, oh crap, now we have to try to show that the pendulum has swung the other way. And it's comments like this that the one that's going around the bottom right now, where he suggests publicly that all proof of stake tokens are securities. I mean, maybe that's a possibility, but I mean, you can't make statements like that, in my opinion. And this is where the FU comes from, is that this is not politically strategic at all. You cannot make blanket statements like that without providing an option for how to do that appropriately and quickly. So if they decide that everything is a security, which I hope not, obviously, if they decide that everything is a security, then there has to be, if they're going to come out and say this stuff, there has to be a path that all of the unregistered securities can follow to come into compliance without immediately being penalized for something that you couldn't have possibly known was going to be the case. And so that's my biggest, I think at the moment, that's my biggest criticism of this, is that you can't make these statements without then providing a viable solution that doesn't lead to litigation, right? Because if he was to decide that blanket right now without another solution, how do we all come into compliance? Like, is every platform then going to be charged for selling an unregistered security? I don't know. But those are all implications that we definitely have to think about. The other compounding factor here is crypto regulation should come from lawmakers, Congress. And the problem that we're going to have in America right now is the Senate is going to be almost impossible to get any crypto legislation through. The House, you might be able to get some through, but the Senate is going to be near impossible. And Biden currently is a complete wild card on this. I mean, I don't think he knows what day it is, let alone what crypto is. Politics aside, he's not the type of person that should have veto power over something this impactful. I'm biased because it's a space I spend my life in. But anyways, so FU to Gensler for saying shit in the sense that it really sucks. It gets a lot of people confused, concerned. This is exactly the problem. People are continuously moving offshore. People are starting to geo-block and completely block US people from participating at all. And Canada and other jurisdictions, not necessarily because we know for sure that what we're doing is wrong, but rather there's so much uncertainty that it's not worth it. And
it kind of leads us back to the arms race as well, right? If we want to have...
This is like the antithesis of what you should be doing if you want to try to win the arms race. Like, stop snuffing out the flame that exists here. Rather, let's put boundaries and fences and parameters around the flame and then dump gas on the mofo.
Make it attractive and safe as opposed to people distilling in their basements, right?
Yeah, and like I'm probably a little weird about this. Like I actually don't mind personally if everything somehow becomes regulated one way or another. Like I think that's inevitable. How it becomes regulated, don't know. But we better get our poop in a group pretty quick here because we've become quite uncompetitive. Anyways, as always, would welcome an opportunity to speak to Gensler directly. We haven't been able to do that currently. I think what Congress need. Yeah, you can tag him. We'll see if he responds. But I mean, I think even Congress, like we've had an opportunity to speak with Congress people and senators currently, and there's a handful that really understand the beneficial nature of blockchain technology, especially beyond just blockchain finance and NFTs. But the vast majority of Congress, unfortunately, just doesn't understand it. And I mean, you can have hearings and you can have people get up there and try to position it, but most of these entities right now, it's self-preservation. Like they're getting up there and just trying to make sure that they're not going to be the ones getting in shit. And so it's really not a conducive environment for meaningful, thoughtful regulation. So hopefully Gensler and the crew pull your head out of the sand, acknowledge that this is currently a $1 trillion industry and will be orders of magnitude larger than that in the coming decade. The only decision is that going to all take place offshore of the US, or are US people going to be able to participate in one of the greatest wealth accumulation opportunities, I think, of our lifetime? And
so FU arms race, FU Gensler, FU hackers,
FU Friday.
FU Friday.
So, but honestly, I think there's some positive stuff that will come out of that. Regardless, I think the more that regulation becomes front and center and becomes a regular conversation, it's almost a daily topic that Gensler talks about. So to me, at the very least, that suggests that we may see movement, hopefully sooner rather than later, and we can start building expectations. Anyways, like, share, subscribe, all that shit. Press all the buttons underneath whatever platform you're watching on. Love and appreciate your support. Here we are, Friday. The week is done. It's been a good week. It's been interesting. It was shitty on Monday. A lot of interesting stuff happened throughout the week. Let's hope this weekend is a little more calm than last weekend. And we'll see you Monday, same place, 12:30 p.m. Eastern. Go find yourself, Ceara.
Go find yourself, JD.
Later.